Black hair has its origins dating back to times of ancient Egypt. Styles we recognize today, such as braids, locks, and wigs, can be traced back to the ancient Egyptians through hieroglyphics and mummified bodies. For pharaohs and queens, their hair was seen as a symbol of pride and status. Intricate braiding techniques were used to create detailed styles fit for royalty. For the regular class, wearing their natural curls and basic braids were not uncommon. Women could also decide to shave their heads and for comfort in the hot climates and opt for wigs to wear. Wigs were seen as a high form of value, and women would treasure them. With the advancement of hairstyling, accessories such as ivory and metal hair pieces are most commonly found in tombs like that of Cleopatra. The Egyptians were also known to decorate their hair with flower petals and ribbons. During the 1600s, Africans were forced to abandon what they knew as home to board slave ships to later arrive in Jamestown to serve their life, as well as many generations after as slaves. Initially, slaves were forced to cut their hair to remain sanitary in order to prevent the spread of ringworm and lice. The cutting of hair also served as a way to take away their sense of culture and identity. Slaves would also be forced to wear head wraps, but would later just only be required for women. White women believed African American hair would pique the white man's interest in a negative way, so they were forced to wear headscarves and was even mandatory in some states. They go on to become unique to each area. Before slavery, African American women would use products such as palm oil and special combs to maintain their hair. They were forced to use tools such as butter, kerosene, and carding combs for sheep in order to maintain hair. Indoor slaves did not use head wraps as they were signs for the difference in status for field slaves and house slaves. They would often also wear braids instead. Slaves oftentimes would use Sunday as a time to do their hair and would remove their headscarves during church. White hair was praised as the standard for good hair, which would go and affect society today. Slaves' hair would be compared to wool, and they would attempt to straighten their hair by using dangerous means such as mixing lye and potatoes. This would go on until the abolition of slavery in 1867 and the years following after.
Now for an eye-opener on woman's top question, hair. Most hairdressers spend their time and skill in trying to put curls into women's hair and keep them there long enough to justify all the talk about permanent waves. Here at the British Colonies Club, we met a hair expert who does permanent waving in reverse. Her clients are all Africans. They're born with a permanent wave.
Following the ending of slavery, blacks were finding themselves having to conform to white standards of beauty. This was necessary in order to fit into society, such as finding job positions, attending social settings such as church. The perception of black hair was oftentimes seen as a negative. Natural curls were deemed unprofessional, ugly, and nappy, and the beginning of the discrimination based on hair texture was to be apparent. Since straight hair was considered ideal, this was the many separations between those of darker skin and lighter. Those of lighter complexions were more likely to be hired and put into positions of work. Hair was also used as one of the determining factors of how blacks were perceived, and most dark-skinned black women were in favor of straight hairstyles. Means to straighten hair would change in 1880 with the availability of the hot comb to the U.S. market. Later in the 1990s, black hair care would come to change with Madam C.J. Walker's selling of hair care products. More means of straightening hair wouldn't cease with the invention of the permanent chemical hair straightener known as a relaxer. Black women were accustomed to the white standard of straightening hair to simply exist in society. This came to change with the comings of the civil rights movement, and the afro was seen as a way to reclaim black culture as a means to deviate away from Eurocentric styles. Afros in the civil rights movement. The afro was seen as a way to reclaim black culture as a means to deviate away from Eurocentric styles. Natural curls were seen as unprofessional, ugly, and nappy. And the civil rights movement was a catalyst for change for how blacks viewed their hair. The fro was a message of black power and rebellion. The deviation from straight hair was encouraging to the wearing of natural hair, and this resulted in the beginnings of the phrase "black is beautiful." The fro was also seen as a pride and power symbol, influenced by its use in the Black Panthers. This developed its reputation as a political symbol and was iconically worn by the Black Panthers advocate Angela Davis. The fro would then go on to gradually make its way into mainstream fashion in the 1970s. With the trend of the afro becoming popular, displays of the fad were making its way into television and film. Shows like Soul Train showcased the afro and served as an added emphasis on the positivity of black culture. The afro could also be seen in Pam Grier in her role in the film Foxy Brown in 1974. In the same year, Beverly Johnson became the first woman on the cover of Vogue with straightened hair, which showed that straight hair was still the standard, but it was natural hair was making a return. In the late 1970s, the trend of the Jerry curl started to appear. This could be seen in music videos and performances of that of Michael Jackson, Prince and the Revolution, and Lionel Richie. Following this, model Grace Jones would popularize fat tops in the 1980s. Later on, in 1998, Spike Lee's movie School Days would go on to describe differences in racial biases, addressing hair texture and skin color differences. Into the 1990s, a variety of textured hairs are making their way onto TV. The hit sitcom Living Single of 1993 showcases a diverse cast of 4 black women as main characters, each with different hair textures. In the same year, Janet Jackson would wear Brock's braids in the film Poetic Justice. Later, in 1999, Lauryn Hill would be featured
Hair is
on the cover of
relaxed. White people are relaxed. Your hair is nappy. They're not happy.
Oh, God. This October, Chris Rock will take you back to your roots.
Just yesterday, my daughter came into the house and said, "Daddy, how come I don't have good hair?" I wonder how she came up with that idea.
Within the black community, if you have good hair.
Tiana, which gave young black girls an image of a princess who looks like them. Later followed up in 2015 with the introduction of Barbie dolls with varying body types, skin colors, and hair textures. Leading into 2017 was the New York law banning the discrimination based on hair texture. And movies like Netflix original Napoli Ever After in 2019 serves as an exemplary tale of a black woman changing her hair and learning how to love herself.